Hello everyone, and welcome to your NARSA weekly update for the week commencing Monday, the 4th of August, 2025. Wow, those are words that I never thought I would ever say ever again. It's Gary here again, and do you know what? Do you know what I think we'll do? I think we'll do what, remember back in the day, if you're old enough, what Dallas did when Bobby Ewing got killed out and then they kind of brought him back and just said, you know what, that was just a dream. That was just something that never happened. We'll just forget about that season completely and we'll start again as if nothing ever happened and bring back Bobby. I think we'll do that now and just pretend that the last month didn't actually happen and we are here. I am absolutely delighted to be back after a month's hiatus, and I hope that you are too. Unfortunately, I do need to talk about Rangers at some point. Oh my God, at some point today. But first, let me talk about what's happened since I last chatted to you. If you're a regular member or a regular listener, I should say, or you at least listened to the last episode because it was a wee bit, what would you say, emotion filled or something like that. You will remember I did a bit of a very emotional, tear filled thank you and farewell on the 7th of July. And my belief at that point was that was truly it. I couldn't or wouldn't really have been able to provide any real reasonable level of quality in terms of the product of this podcast under the previous president or regime for reasons that I explained at that particular time. And then on the Tuesday night, so that was a Monday that I recorded, then on a Tuesday night, I was just sitting, working on my laptop on the couch, and then I realised that one of the 9 votes that was given to Billy Ferguson at the EGM, which happened on the 5th of July, was illegitimate because it was cast by an associate member club at Vancouver Downtown. And I just hadn't thought about that during the EGM in terms of the voting rights of clubs. We've basically a two-tier structure here in NARSA. One is you are a member club, which is essentially a full member club, and you have voting rights and everything. And the other membership type is an associate member club, where you have input, you have access to all the what can I say, the trappings of being a NARSA member club, but you don't have the ability to be able to vote. You can still attend voting sessions, you can still attend the AGM, provide your input and such, but when it comes to the actual voting in and of itself, you don't get to do that. And that was what kind of happened. So I thought, right, okay, I'll sleep on it and I'll check it out on Wednesday. And then as I'm checking out the list on Wednesday, the exact same situation occurred for another one of the clubs who voted for Billy Ferguson. And on this occasion, it was Toronto number 1, which is very, very ironic. If you attended the EGM, you will know the absolute irony with the fact that it was Toronto number 1. That it was another illegitimate club in terms of voting as well. So we kind of found ourselves in a very bizarre position of having the president who isn't really the president because he didn't actually win the election. A couple of days before that, he lost the election a couple of days before that. So I brought it up with the executive at the time and recommended that they do some investigation, that they specifically consult Robert's Rules of Order and figure out what that looks like. I'd already done a bit of a check on Robert's Rules of Order, and it said if a vote happens and votes have been cast that are found to be afterwards illegitimate, then it should go to a revote. So we then had a situation which I think in the fullness of time, the people that were involved won't be incredibly proud of. We had the executive come back via the president at the time and said that they weren't going to entertain any other form of action other than just moving forward. And they encouraged me very politely to say to not relitigate this issue. All right. So my insistence, bizarre folks, I'll tell you, but my insistence from the beginning was that the membership had to be informed. Of course, the membership had to be informed. And thankfully, eventually, they decided to do that. Way, way, way more effort than it should have been to get us to that point. And the newer members of the executive get a pass for that. They're still finding their feet, and it was a bit more it was a bit more volatile than you would expect for the first few weeks of your tenure. But the more tenured member of the executive at the time should have known better. That was very, very poor decision making, very, very poor influence, and very, very poor behaviour. There were strong assumptions made of my obsession with control and my obsession with power and my absolute want and need to be the president of NARSA. And that was obviously made by people who don't listen to this podcast each week, because I think I made it more than abundantly clear on many occasions that having one person at the helm, i.e. me in that occasion, for so long just isn't healthy or progressive for an organisation that needs to be progressive, that needs to move with the times, that needs to continue to maintain relevance in the Rangers community at large. So during this time, I recused myself from consideration for the president position and recommitted myself to supporting where I could from the past president's chair. And I think that bamboozled some people. It wasn't a political play or anything like that. I was just saying I was okay to a point after the AGM, and then I thought I lost fair and square in the AGM. As it turns out, I didn't. I won fair and square at the AGM, but that got all muddied and clouded afterwards, and then we kind of found out ourselves where we were. My stance then was taking stock of who I am, what I want to do, what I want to be, who I want to be, and where I can add the most value. So around about this time was when Alan McWatt from the Orange County Rangers Supporters Club decided to throw his hat into the ring and declared his intention to do so in advance, which was a class move in and of itself. And then we held the second EGM 5 weeks after the AGM, and then which also included, of course, some real utter absolute nonsense and incredibly ridiculous behaviour, over the meetings, over email, or through our WhatsApp group as well. Then on this occasion, it became a wee bit different, because we all got on the campaign trail for real this time. And for the first time in 3 meetings, the 3 that I just mentioned there, which were spread over the 5 weeks, it was an actual fair fight, because, we knew that we were actually in a fight. Unlike the previous 2, where, what can I say to be generous here, older style, darker arts were employed. Let's just maybe leave it at that. And that all resulted in a much more sensible meeting being held on the 26th of July, where it went to a vote. Again, Billy Ferguson ran and stood against Alan McWatt. And Alan McWatt, I'm very delighted to tell you, won the election and is your new president of NARSA. So that was a lot of drama, completely avoidable, of course, as most drama typically is. And interestingly, almost immediately after the result was announced and we moved on from the meeting, I was asked if that meant a return of the podcast. And I honestly hadn't even thought about that. I truly hadn't. I hadn't even thought that far ahead. And it was said kind of somewhat in jest, but we had planned to put out that interview that I put out last week there with Colin Bowman, just to kind of chronicle the behind the scenes experiences of the convention, and that was fairly well received. I hope you had a chance to check that out if you haven't yet. It's just something a wee bit interesting. If you've attended a convention, and if you've ever organised any event, you know that there's 500 million things go on in the background that no one will ever see. And such, and it was good to hear Colin's take on that. And then subsequently, I did speak to Alan directly to ask what he wanted to do with the pod, and he was more than happy to have it return. So, your new NARSA executive is, just to confirm, the past president is me, the president is Alan McWatt, as I say, the vice president is Gary Fleming, and the secretary is Beth Reid, and the treasurer is Andy Burnett. And on the communications front, we have Colin Bowman decided to join us, and from a convention director perspective, we have Brian Campbell. Yes, we do indeed. He is back in the fold with us, and we are absolutely all the better for that too. And we have another new addition where we have, on the broadcast RTV director front, we have Dan Bransfield, who joined us after the EGM as well. So we only have one open position now. At one point, there were a lot of open positions because the challenge that had afflicted Billy in his not presidency, as it turns out, Also afflicted Andy Burnett on the treasurer side because it was nominated. He was nominated by Toronto number one, so we had to go back to an election for that. So at one point, not so long ago, we actually had more than half of the executive positions were open. Thankfully, now we only have one open position, which is for the sponsorship and marketing director. And I would really, truly love to get this one right, folks, if we could, because there's such an opportunity here, and we have so many good, valuable assets out there that we can use from a sponsorship and marketing for good perspective that would help NARSA get some much needed funds in the door as well. So we're actively recruiting for that one right now. If you have the skills and experience and abilities and time available to be able to dedicate to that for the next couple of years, well, it'll be a bit less than a couple of years now, I guess, then you would be absolutely welcome to have a conversation with us. You can get in touch with me directly at rangersSCC@hotmail.com. That's 2 S's and 2 C's, and we can have a wee blether and see where it goes from there. Folks, I've honestly, truly never ever seen anything like the turmoil that's been created, and I emphasise the word created there, in the 5 weeks since the AGM. And as I mentioned there briefly, it was all completely 100% avoidable had open, honest communication been employed rather than what was actually done at that particular time, or during those times, I should say. And I really hope, and I'm actually quite confident, that this is now fully behind us and that we can now move forward with integrity to do our jobs, which is, of course, to serve the membership of NARSA, which very much got lost in all the noise that was created for that period of time. So we're going to move forward and do the very, very best we can, which is something that the Rangers Football Club men's team might want to also think about doing. Shall we get on to the game segment here? Oh, the game segment. I wish it was in better circumstances. I could talk about the last two games in the next section here. The first one, of course, was the 1-1 draw away at Panathinaikos, which saw us qualify for at least Europa League group football, which is terrific. But of course, we're hoping for Champions League football, of course. And this next week will tell us a lot more about our chances of making that happen or not. In the game, I didn't actually see the first leg of the Panathinaikos game. I did see the highlights, extended highlights, but I was doing a talk for a client downtown on excellence at the very same time as the game, so I didn't get a chance to see it. But my understanding is the second game was quite similar to the first game. I don't think we played well at all, quite honestly, and that's been a theme under Russell Martin thus far in the first 3 games. It's not very, very good. We've had a rough start under him, and I don't know if I mentioned this before or not, but I've got 3 good pals here who are Southampton fans, and I play football with them, and I recall the season that he got Southampton back up into the English Premier League, that I think he lost something like his first 5 games, or didn't win in his first 5 games. Somebody can maybe correct me on that, because I remember always messaging them going like, what's happening with you guys? And then they went on this absolutely incredible run of winning something like 21 of the next 25 games or something like that. The challenge we have, and you very well know this, is that we don't have time. We don't have that sort of time. We're already down in the dumps after what happened at the league there on the weekend. I'll talk about that in a wee second here. But yeah, it's been a rough start. And if this is a pattern, then I don't know. If we've not played very well in 3 of the first 3 games, and we're already behind in the league, and we did qualify for Europe, that feels all right. It doesn't feel awful as in terms of like losing the first 5 games in terms of that analogy. So we'll see what that looks like. It kind of feels to me like I can see what we're trying to do in terms of the possession football and kind of moving the ball quickly and in and out of possession, working as hard as we need to work and such, but we just aren't quite there. Certainly not with the possession and some of the passing. Oh boy, it's like watching my team play, and we're not very good, I'll tell you that. It was tough to see what the actual philosophy was, because it kind of wasn't back to the wall heroics, and it, sometimes you feel great about that afterwards, where you're like, the goalie had 5 brilliant saves, they hit the post, we were putting our bodies on the line. It wasn't like that. It was like this weird dynamic, wasn't it? Where we were still trying. Their finishing was absolutely dreadful. To be quite honest, that's why we're through. But I don't know. It was just a weird game, I think, and I think we'll just take that victory in terms of the overall two-legged victory that is, and move on from there. They scored from that weird header that I thought was offside, but as it turns out, after taking 47 minutes to decide it wasn't actually offside, it was onside, and then Gassama scores almost immediately. With a brilliant finish actually, which actually felt like our first meaningful attack on goal there, and then we saw it out, which was good, but nothing really too much more than that I can say about it. In terms of the positives, obviously getting through, obviously the scoreline as well. Gassama scoring again is brilliant. He's proving to be a fantastic asset for us for right now. And as I mentioned, a real positive for me was their finishing. Their finishing was just dire. It was all over the place. Motherwell was quite similar on Saturday too. And then the negatives, difficult to watch. Their goal was annoying because, as it turns out, it was actually a bit of a sign of things to come for the domestic game on the weekend in terms of not defending as a unit and leaving players straggling at the back, which then keeps people on side. The stats say we had 57% possession, 7 shots on goal with 3 on target, versus their 14 shots on goal with 6 on target. Now, I wonder if that's a theme, and I'll talk about that for the Motherwell game here just in a wee bit. But the referee, I thought he did okay, no complaints. I didn't really see him get too involved, other than just doing what he had to do for the game. So he'll get the standard 7 out of 10 for that. Second game, the very disappointing 1-1 draw away to Motherwell. And do you know what, folks? This is not a word I think I've ever used for a Rangers game. It's certainly not in the podcast anyway. I thought it was boring. I did. The first half was okay, but certainly as the second half went on, it was actually literally boring to watch. And I said that to a few people on the weekend, and I didn't get any disagreement there. Russell Martin was understandably and justifiably, I think, raging after the game. Interesting to see, we've heard, and I've certainly heard for the most part, he's a very, very nice guy, very, very popular in the dressing room, does really well with his man management and such, but he did not hold back at all after the game, did he? And he called out 2 particular players. He didn't name them, but called out 2 particular players of kind of reverting to type and playing their game, not the game for the team and such. So we'll find out what that was. I heard on David Edgar's Heart and Hand podcast this morning that some of the rumour is it was Mo Diomande and Raskin, and I'm not 100% sure. I just automatically, by default now, go to James Tavernier because everybody's on his case all the time. But the whole, yeah, it was very, very difficult. And I think the challenge that Russell Martin and his team has right now is there are things that you just genuinely only see in competitive action. You only see in games once the guys cross the white line, so to speak, and he's seen it now, and he's seen it in three occasions. He did mention it's a wee bit easier to get up for the European games, and those kind of take care of themselves, but he's now just seen, hopefully, maybe what he wants to see or what he needs to see in terms of the team performance and the team actions and behaviours when things are or are not going our way, because we had a wee bit of a mixed bag in the entire 90 minutes that we endured there on the weekend. Captain James Tavernier scored from a corner, brilliant corner. Nice to see the corners getting mixed up and the different people taking the corners now, because that just keeps the opposition guessing as well, doesn't it? So they don't know who's actually going to take it, and they don't know what type and style of corner's going to come in. When it's just James Tavernier taking all the corners all the time, you can just look at video footage and say he's got these 2 or 3 corners. We'll just prepare for any one of those, and then we'll take it from there. But I mean, I did think that we were going to kind of see it out and head for the victory. But Motherwell, fair play by the way to Motherwell. I thought they played exceptionally well. I really did. And wasn't the pitch was absolutely incredible, wasn't it? It was absolutely fantastic conditions. So congratulations to whomever has done the work there in terms of the ground staff and such, because it was like watching. It wasn't like watching Motherwell in Motherwell. Let's just say that. But Motherwell just didn't give up, and they played very well. I thought what Motherwell did was what we were going to be doing, which was constantly pressing, constantly running, constantly trying to create. And I feel that over, certainly in hindsight anyway, we got kind of treated to the same game as we did in midweek, didn't we? The amount of trouble that we just genuinely put ourselves in. This playing from the back stuff is It's ridiculous. It's fraught. It's dangerous. I mean, we're absolutely going to get caught out by better teams. Not that we were any better than Motherwell on the day, of course. But that said, when you've got this kind of madness or suicide passing that we've got at the back, every time Jack Butland did kick a long ball, it just went straight to Motherwell. So there has to be something. There has to be some middle ground in there. Surely, something for us to be able to kind of say, right, if that's not working, then let's employ this. But when both of them aren't working, what's the plan C? We'll see what that looks like. Their goal in 87 minutes was just like a horrific rerun of what we've witnessed time and time again with this particular team, or certainly this squad, or major parts of the squad anyway, where we just do you know what it is, folks? We just don't defend as if our lives depended on it. I mentioned that there in terms of the entertainment factor for the Panathinaikos game. It was just a kind of weird vibe to the game. It wasn't like this heroic backs to the wall sort of thing in terms of our defending, and we just don't put our bodies where it hurts, and we don't seem to have that that sharpness and sense of self, and then when you don't have that, you're going to get what you're going to get. And as Russell Martin said afterwards, a point was more than we deserved, because they had a lot of opportunities to do good things in that game and get to 3 points. And I would have been disappointed, but I wouldn't have been sitting here absolutely raging saying that was completely unjustified. In terms of the positives, I think just to that exact point, we got a point, which was a bonus. And I know I always say this, and I know it's just the first game of the season, but you never know how important that point might be come the end of the season, come the business end of the season, because we were very, very, very poor. And to get a point from a game where we played extremely poorly is a good thing, I think, overall. In terms of the new players, I was actually having a bit of a laugh about this with my niece Chloe, and on the weekend, or actually last week and on the weekend, it's just the summer has been so bizarre for all the stuff that I kind of told you at the beginning of today's podcast, that I haven't had a chance to really immerse myself in the new players yet. So I'm still getting to know who's who and what they're doing and such. And I thought, and I'll probably butcher his name, so apologies in advance, but I thought Jiga played very well at the back, very cool, very calm, very composed. He was putting himself about at the back there, which was great to see. And I thought Lyle Cameron did well when he came on afterwards too. In terms of the negatives, is this the pattern that we're going to endure now? More possession, but giving up more chances, because that's certainly what happened in the 2 games of the season that I've seen. And against better teams, we'll get spanked. If that's the case, it's quite simply that's just what's going to happen. And it is kind of dull to watch overall. Now obviously we made a new signing today, and we have Ant-Man in, and who is another attacker for us, and a right-sided winger. So, I think building up from the back and trying to make sure we don't lose too many goals. Obviously, that's 2 goals in 2 games we've lost there, but, maybe the attacking potency gets better as we go on. It has to, because some of the decision-making, was just garbage. We got into some really good positions and just didn't do anything with it at all. So it was just like, I'm just going to chuck this in here, and if something happens, great, but I'm not actually making a proper decision that says this is going to be to this player who's running in, because we've already practiced and trained for this. It wasn't like that at all. In terms of the stats, 62% possession, 9 shots on goal, 5 on target, versus 13 shots on goal with 5 on target. So the same amount on target, but it just felt like they were better, obviously better in terms of chance creation. And I was kind of surprised that we had more possession than them as well, but that's what the stats say. On the referee watch, Stephen McLean, he did okay. He's a wee bit of an ego maniac. You can tell he's always trying to lecture the players and such, and just comes across with an arrogant aura to him. And I'm sure if he was listening to this, he would actually be thrilled by that. That's the type and style of guy that he appears to be. But other than, he did okay in the game, no real complaints, other than booking Lyle Cameron for his very first tackle. I mean, the very first thing he did in a competitive game for Rangers was getting a booking, and he played the ball. You could see it very clearly after it, that he played the ball, and he was just very, very quick to get that. That's poor refereeing. And I think it wasn't anywhere near malicious or as bad as he thought it was. And hopefully he would look back on the tape on that and say he got that one wrong. So for that, he's going to get 6 out of 10 for this particular one. In terms of the next games, coming kind of fast here, thick and fast. Obviously, the first one is tomorrow's game against Victoria Pilsen. I don't know if I've pronounced that well enough. I thought it was Pisen until until I seen it was actually an L and not an I. So that shows you how much I know. And this team has been there or thereabouts in European competition for quite some time now. Certainly recognise the name and such. And that's tomorrow at home at Ibrox, of course, on the 5th of August with a 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 7:45 UK. And then that's followed up on Saturday. It's kind of weird, isn't it, having a European game and then a game on the Saturday? We're just so conditioned over the last 5 or 6 years or so that we play on a Sunday after a European game, with our exploits being primarily in the Europa League. But we are at home to Dundee on Saturday, the 9th of August, and it's another later one for us. And we've got another later one the week after with the Alloa game as well. So we're getting absolutely spoiled on these shores here. And that's a 12:45 Eastern Standard Time kickoff, so 15 minutes later than the weekend there, and it's 5:45 p.m. UK. We need 2 victories, simple as that, don't we? And 2 solid victories. One to give us the best opportunity to go away from home and qualify for the playoff round, and the other one is just to keep ourselves ticking over in the league and just do a good job there. Dundee have not had a good start to this season domestically in terms of the League Cup and the league there, so hopefully that continues on the weekend for us. And just announced this morning, if we go through against Pilsen, we will face either Salzburg or Bruges in the playoff match. So we know that now. Not easy ties, but hopefully once if we get to that spot that we can do what we need to do to get through. I'm not terrified of those ones, and it's always a wee bit better for me when you've heard of the name. See, when you haven't heard of the name, then that becomes a wee bit more of a fear factor for me, because you're thinking, oh god, like is this a team that's been renamed from another team and they're actually a powerhouse? Is this a team of up and comers and they're going to just surprise everyone? It could be one of those seasons. So a wee bit of familiarity there to help us kind of move forward. And those games are scheduled to be played the middle of the month, basically the 19th or 20th and 26th, 27th. Hopefully, we are talking about that in the next couple of weeks here, and then we can move on from there. In terms of RTV, all of the vouchers that we're going to get us over the friendlies and the first couple of competitive games have been sent out, and I think there might be another batch that is required to be sent out, that are required to be sent out. Some people were having some challenges with their logins and such, and of course they waited till the last minute or even half time. I think Alan got some emails at half time saying the code isn't working. You don't, if you're a NARSA member club and you are subscribed to the RTV package, you don't need to go to your club and set it up there. Yes, you could go there if you're going to do testing and stuff and just make sure everything's still working to blow the cobwebs off, but you can just log in on any device anywhere in the world to your club account, redeem the voucher, test it's working, and then move on from there. That's all you need to do. So people waiting to the last minute, I don't know how often we've said that over the years, to be quite honest with you folks, but we're going to get that organised. Dan Bransfield, as I mentioned, is our new RTV director, so you'll be hearing from Dan over the next wee while. I'm sure Alan and Dan are doing their transition work for setting Dan up for success going forward, and I'm sure Alan wants to get on with his new day job and leave Dan to that as well. In terms of shout-outs, I did want to congratulate Alan McWatt on standing up to be counted when it really mattered. And I do believe this is material for the ongoing success and thriving of NARSA to have someone fresh in the seat. As you know, I didn't think that was the case with the previous president, and that's why I had to just kind of back away from the podcast. I couldn't in some way do justice to what's happening, and I think Alan is a breath of fresh air. He's doing all the right things. He's really investing the time in doing this. In fact, him and I are going to be having a conversation a wee bit later today in preparation for our meeting tomorrow night. That will be his first one chairing it as president and such. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to Colin Wolfe, Farquharson Bowman for putting his hand up when he had the opportunity to do the communications work, and he's already done some great work. He's got a brilliant plan for a newsletter. It couldn't have come at the worst time because he's doing a lot of travelling right now, so you won't see the real genuine impacts of his communications ideas until that all settles down for him. But he's got a newsletter. He's already taken complete control of the MailChimp distribution list from me, got some templates set up, got some distribution lists set up, done way more than I ever did when I was in that. I had responsibility for that as well, which is great to see, just that new enthusiasm. And he's working hand in hand with Connor Gunn as well. Connor had resigned his position as social media manager when the election all happened at the AGM, and he's now back in the fold now that we have a more appropriate team for him to work with. So you're going to see some discernible changes over the next wee while in terms of the communication for the better. I am absolutely sure, and then we'll see what happens from there. Do you know what they're actually thinking about doing? They're actually trying to convince me to make this podcast video. And I'm like, I don't know, if you've seen my face, I don't know that that's something you want to see every single week. We do launch this or load this up onto YouTube, and we do get a fair few listeners on YouTube, but it's just basically just a blank screen, not a blank screen. It's like the thumbnail that we have there, which has just got a photograph that's pertinent to the past happenings of Rangers for that particular week. And they're trying to convince me to do video, a wee bit more logistics to get organised, but I'll maybe do that. I do a lot of video work for my own business for coaching and speaking and such, so maybe we'll get that done. But I'd like to hear from you. Would you be interested in seeing a video, or are you're more of an audio and you're just going to listen to it when you're out and about or such? I'd be interested to see what you think. And I'm not going to be offended if you say I do not want to see your face any more than I absolutely have to. I would kind of tend to agree with you on that one. Congratulations also to Dan Bransfield for coming on board, and of course to Brian Campbell for making the leap back on board with us when the time was right. And speaking of Campbells, congratulations to Andrew Campbell, who is a member of the Orange County Rangers Supporters Club, nephew of Brian and son of Graham and Genevieve Campbell, who made the UK under-23 baseball team for the European Championships, which are going on basically, I think it's this week is when all the games are in Prague. And here's the thing, that the Campbell clan, I talked about them on the last podcast that I did, and I love them. I think they're great, such a brilliant, cohesive, tight unit family. And they went over to Prague to support Andrew in his endeavours. And then Brian, at the last minute, decided to go and surprise him. He took young Greg, his boy, with him, and they went and surprised the whole family there. No one knew they were going, which was absolutely brilliant. So to see people's reactions, Brian videoed it, showed me the video a little bit earlier today, and just brilliant. Graham was absolutely shocked to his core, and then they went and met Andrew a little bit later that night. It was in a restaurant in the beginning, and then they went, and then Andrew had no idea, and he was very surprised as well. So that's the memories that people are creating there. So congratulations to Andrew. I hope it goes very, very well, and he can do something meaningful in terms of his international aspirations for his baseball career as well. Such a cool story. And while we're talking about being proud, I'm going to talk about Leo for a wee bit here, since I haven't done that in the last 4 or 5 weeks here. And he's having quite the summer, I have to say. His rugby season is going great guns. They're in the City Championship semi-final this coming Saturday, which is kind of bittersweet. I'm going to say sweet bitter, because the sweet part is they're in the semi-final. I was supposed to be golfing with my football team annual golf tournament, and I said I couldn't golf originally because I just simply I can't afford it, to be honest. And then a very generous member of the team said, "You are going, we will make sure we make it work." And we were supposed to be going out to Kananaskis, and now Leo's game is right in the middle of that. And I know there's a few people grumbling saying, come on, Leo's played a lot of games, you can miss one game. That is not happening. They don't know the type of style of relationship I have with Leo, and I would never miss anything if I can at all avoid it. So Leo trumps golf on this particular occasion. There is a slight possibility, if the game's early enough, I could see the game and then jet straight out and not miss my tee off time, or maybe miss 1 or 2 holes. If we can't get someone to backfill, we'll see what that looks like. But anyway, back to Leo. He's working at Callaway Park. He's working today. He's finished a summer school class called CAM, just a kind of leadership class that he did. And he's been doing great with his driving stuff, picking up his drunk dad from parties and such like that as well. I did enjoy my last 4 weeks, I have to say. And he's doing all that. He's fitting a lot into this time. Him and I are going away 2 weeks today. I don't know what the podcast will look like 2 weeks today, because him and I are leaving to go to Mexico, Puerto Vallarta, 2 weeks today, and I just can't wait for that uninterrupted time. Just him and I, a bit of bonding. We're both very, very busy these days, so you know what that's like in terms of trying to spend quality time with someone. On the weekend there, we did have the Rangers Supporters Club of Calgary's annual general meeting, and the existing executive or existing committee were all voted back in. Now, what was I saying earlier about having one person in role? I've been the president of the Rangers Supporters Club of Calgary since 2008. Since 2000, what's that? Well, 18, 20, like 17 years. the RSCC, we've had a great team over the years. We're a very, very uncontroversial club. Everybody gets on really well. There's never any drama, or emotion, or anything like that. It's a very, very cohesive unit that we've got, and I'm very delighted to welcome Jimmy Hutchins back on. He's been on and off our committee over the years. One of the founders of the club back in 2000, and it's great to have him back on board, and we'll see what happens from there. Congratulations and welcome aboard to Leanne Crichton, who's the new women's team manager after Joe Potter's departure. It'll be interesting to see how she does. You know, when I'm reading her bio today and it's forgive me for saying the C word, but ex-Celtic and ex-Hibs player, I'm kind of like, all right. But she has a very good coaching pedigree. She's said all the right things, and we'll see. Hopefully she can actually bring home the league title this season, where Joe Potter failed to do that on the final day of the season, both seasons that she was with us. And a couple of events to talk about. Heart in Hand, the Rangers podcast, are having one of their absolutely fantastic live shows on Friday, the 15th of August. So what's that? That's a week, 2 weeks on Friday? A week on Friday. Is it something? A week on Friday. My apologies. Yep. A week on Friday. And I just seen an announcement prior to recording today that they have added John Bomber Brown, of course, from his excursions with Rangers TV and Corrupt Gate and then the NARSA convention. Bomber was an absolute hoot. He was so good, so good. And Kissimmee and David and his crew have added Bomber into that. So tickets are going on. They've been on sale for quite some time. And they are going fast. So if you have an intention of actually going there, please don't wait to get your ticket, on the week of, because you might probably miss out on that, and then that would be a bit of a downer. So here's hoping a good result this week, and on the weekend we'll get people more into the delight of being a Rangers fan, and that will transcend itself into you going and enjoying a wonderful show on the 15th there. And the Melbourne City Loyal Rangers Supporters Club are having their Culture Weekend, November 21st to 22nd. Ian Ferguson, Gary Stevens, Stuart Monroe all going. There's going to be a boat cruise, there's going to be entertainment, there's going to be a Saturday gala dinner and such as well. In terms of a convention update, we are literally just finalising the wrap-up of 2025, the 2025 convention, I should say, and we finished our negotiations with the hotel and have them fully paid up now. I'm assuming that payment has been made, and that's that. You'll, for the regular listeners, you'll know that this one was particularly fraught, and we were in absolute financial peril in terms of almost being wiped out, and it was a very real possibility. And I'm delighted that we managed to sit down, create, and strike a good working relationship with the Omni Hotel, and come to a financial agreement that was palatable for both parties and gives us an opportunity to move forward in a relatively healthy financial position as well. So, as I was saying to Fraser Thornton when we were down in Kissimmee, through this particular last convention, I learned a lot of skills I would have been okay not learning in my life. I'll tell you that, a lot of things, it was very, very stressful at times. I don't really get afflicted by stress too much. I do a lot of daily work on myself to make sure that sort of stuff doesn't come to the fore, and it just wasn't very enjoyable, folks. It was really, really difficult to do this one, but thankfully the output and the outcome is great, and NARSA is very much in a fabulous foundational position to move forward with intention, with purpose, with integrity as we go forward now, without the danger or the looming financial peril really being in our way. So I'm very, very happy about that, very proud of that, actually, to be perfectly honest. And we did have an article on the Rangers website last week talking about the Kissimmee convention, and Rangers also put out on their socials, as did we from a NARSA perspective, a kind of, what was it, like a 1 minute video or so, kind of chronicling the first 2 or 3 days up to the Saturday, I believe. I guess up to the Saturday, because we had some of the football coverage in there, but not so much the grand banquet, which is too bad. It would have been nice to see everybody all dressed up and such, but really nice article. There's a quote from me in there, there's a quote from Fraser Thornton in there, Mark Haitley's in there too, and such. So yeah, very, very, very cool article. If you haven't checked it out, then please do. I'll put a note in there on the show notes as well. In terms of next year, We've had a few inquiries. Nothing has been discussed or decided for next year. I did mention earlier that we do have a meeting tomorrow evening, and that will be, I'm certain that will be one of the items that's on the agenda to talk about whether we're going to actually try and put together a convention, with 11 months' notice. We kind of did one with 5 weeks' notice last time, so we could certainly pull it off. The challenge we have, honestly, folks, is that it's a World Cup year here in North America and Mexico. And I don't know that anywhere is going to be less expensive as a result of that. And even if we pick a destination city that doesn't have a World Cup game, that might be a negotiating factor for us to go and say, look, you're not having anything going on. We could bring X amount of hundreds of fans over and do a wee something, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll see what that looks like. I'll certainly let you know what I know when I know it, which will hopefully be for next week. In terms of the communication, I didn't see anything on it from a Gears Guide perspective prior to recording, but of course we would have, I guess, that by the press conference must be long gone by now for tomorrow's game, so I'll look forward to hearing that from Russell Martin today. Tomorrow's obviously the game, and then there'll be the press conference for Friday, I would imagine Friday for Saturday's game and such, so it kind of gives you a rough idea of the structure. I did think there was one interesting thing last week in the news. I noticed it on Sky Sports, is that Willie Collum came out and categorically said Scottish refereeing is not corrupt. So, well, I don't know about you, but that makes me feel better. Oh my God. All right, we believe you, Willie. He's missing the point, and most of the mainstream press are missing the point. And in this occasion, the corruption that I think Bomber related to, and we didn't actually get a chance to really chat about it too much, and I'm a wee bit disappointed by that down in Kissimmee. But on this occasion, in my opinion, and certainly from my vantage point, it's not this direct thing where someone's going with a brown envelope, to Willie Collum and saying, give that to your guys, or to Clancy, or to McLean, or Dallas, or whomever. There's direct and indirect influence, and direct and indirect corruption. There's, grand corruption, petty corruption, political, bureaucratic, corporate, judicial, cultural, like whatever it is. But there's been a conditioning over the past couple of decades here where referees know that their life is inherently, literally more difficult if they give a wrong decision against the team from the east end of the city. It's just a fact. That's what happens, whether it's their windows getting smashed, whether it's threats to their family, whether it's abuse of their kids in school, whether it's hassle in the workplace, whatever it looks like. So there's this indirect corruption that's going on that's been manufactured expertly, by the way. Credit where it's due if that's your thing. Expertly manufactured by that mob from the East End. We need to start to fight fire with fire. We need to call out these things when they need called out, and we need action to be taken when it gets taken. And then you'll get to a point where all we've ever wanted is a level playing field. And once we get a level playing field, may the best team win. And then go from there. Because right now, it's not a level playing field. We know that for a fact. It's not. It's just not. And they would admit it as well if they've got anything like truthfulness in and about themselves as well. So yeah, Willie, like, shut up with that. It's not corrupt, and that's it. Every single corrupt person in life for the history of humankind has said, I'm not corrupt. Like, that's just what you say. So you're actually drawing more attention to yourself now that I think about it. Anywho, the one last wee thing we have is the Rangers Ladies Lunch presented by Molten Brown. That's Friday the 22nd of August. I've seen another big article on the Rangers website about that as well. If you're planning to go to that, similar to the Heart and Hand show, if you can go get your tickets, that would be fabulous. Okay, a wee bit longer today, just because it's the rebirth, or the kind of coming back home podcast, and I had to just explain exactly what happened. Just to give you context, I would never take it lightly and just walk away because I'm in a huff. I wasn't in a huff. I'd actually thought very, very long and hard about just ending it as we did last time, and I'm very delighted, and hopefully you can hear it in my energy and in my voice. I'm delighted to be back. I've loved doing this for the last 4.5 years, and we will just see where it takes us. We have some grand ideas, and I know that Alan wants to connect our communications more so with our strategic direction direction as we go forward, which is absolutely music to my eyes and ears. So we'll see what happens there. As always, folks, thank you very, very, very much for taking the time to listen. And please do share it with someone that you think might enjoy it, especially because there's some juicy stuff at the beginning as well. And I will see you next week. I'm delighted. I'm so glad to be back. And over the next wee while, I'll get the new executive members. I'll actually get every executive member at some point on the pod, just so you can get to know them a wee bit more, get to know what club they're from, what their history is with Rangers, and what they're planning to do in their portfolio over this particular term, and just mix it up a wee bit. But until next week, nothing more than 2 victories will do, folks, and you know that. Until next week, my friends, I will chat to you then. Please do take care of yourself and all the very best. Follow.